Good morning and welcome. Thank you all for coming. My name is Temi. I'm on the product marketing team at Microsoft. I'm here to intro this really important topic. So we're here to discuss how to maintain regulatory compliance with the Microsoft Sovereign Cloud. So I'm going to intro our speaker. We have Hassan and Harald Fianbach. Ella is a principal PM manager, and she works on the Microsoft Sovereign Public Cloud. And Harald is a senior product manager who works on the Microsoft Sovereign Private Cloud. We have a pretty straightforward agenda for you today. We will define what is digital sovereignty and Microsoft's approach to digital sovereignty, and then we will go through Microsoft's digital commitments and the capabilities within. And then we will do a deep dive on the Microsoft Sovereign Public Cloud, as well as a deep dive on the Microsoft Sovereign Private Cloud. Q&A, so we will take questions after the session, so feel free to stay behind and have a conversation with Ella, Harald, and Jack if you have any questions. And with that, we will get started on digital sovereignty, and welcome Ella.
Thank you. Oh, I have my own microphone. Can you guys hear me? What is the clicker? Okay. So first of all, thank you so much, everybody, for showing up at 8:30 a.m. on the third day of Ignite. Disclaimer, we are not responsible for the rain and cold weather outside. I did not bring Seattle's weather with me. I looked up the weather before coming, and it said 165 days of rain in Seattle, 65 days in San Francisco. I figured we were going to have 3 nice days. Today didn't make it. However, we are responsible to talk to you about digital sovereignty and Microsoft Sovereign Cloud, so thank you so much for joining us today. So digital sovereignty is a top requirement for most organizations, and it's definitely a top requirement for governments, public institutions seeking to harness the full power of the cloud while retaining control over their data and operations. So how did we get here? As you see from the slide, literally we have a new regulation coming up every 4 to 5 days, targeting AI, cybersecurity, or data privacy. With over 1,000 global policy initiatives over 69 countries, to date we have 127 nations with some kind of privacy law enforced. And this space is not really slowing down. Organizations need a trusted partner to safeguard their most critical systems and data. And that's why we engineer trust into our approach with embedded security, resiliency, and transparency across our cloud and AI services. We understand that digital sovereignty landscape is evolving quickly, and it's being shaped by customer growing concerns for data security, compliance, and regulatory standards, and even global trade and geopolitical issues. You all heard Scott during the keynote. He brought up sovereignty as one of the key initiatives for Azure right at the beginning of his keynote. So it is really top of mind for our leaders. So before we talk about our approach, let's define digital sovereignty. At its core, it's the capability to participate in the digital economy securely, independently, with self-determined controls. It's not about autarky, and it's not about isolation. To participate in the digital economy, you need to be connected, and you need to work with international providers, international partners, and international customers. Our approach is straightforward. It should be foundational to our cloud and services delivered through a well-governed combination of technical, contractual, and operational controls. And because every workload and every organization has different levels of sensitivity and criticality, sovereignty requirements are adaptable to the needs of each customer. So if there's one key takeaway I want you to take from this session, is the adaptability and flexibility of our offerings to your customer needs. When it comes to sovereignty, experience does matter. I know this is a busy slide, but it does show you, like, just for the past 10 years, how busy we've been trying to deliver sovereignty to our customers. Back in 2016, so about 10 years ago, is when we first launched the first sovereign cloud in Germany, codenamed Black Forest. I don't know why they named it that way, but that's what it was called. GDP. GDPR was in 2017. We committed to full enforcement by 2018. We were the first major tech company to have full enforcement for GDPR. We launched our first cloud data centers in Africa and the Middle East, enabling local data storage. We extended California's CCPA, the Privacy Act, beyond California to cover all of the US. So we had always extended compliance initiatives. And we announced the European Union data boundary back in 2021, so the storage and the processing of personal data stays within Europe. We finished it over 3 phases. Phase 1 was for customer data. Then in phase 2, we added telemetry and synchronized data. And by 2025, we had full personal data storage and process in the European Union. Also, it's been a busy year really for us in 2025. We announced the expansion of the Microsoft Sovereign Cloud to public and private, which we will talk about today. We launched 𝗬𝗲 in France and Delos in Germany, national partner clouds. 𝗬𝗲 is blue in French. I don't know what Delos mean, but that's what they're called. And we announced our 5 European data commitments. Now we have 70 Azure regions live globally, and we've invested over $20 billion in European cloud infrastructure. So when we look at sovereignty, we keep the customer value in mind. And what the values that we're trying to deliver is that we want to, I'm sorry, this is the digital, I jumped a little bit. Let's double click on the Microsoft digital commitments that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Europe specifically has many regulations harmonized across many different countries, and that provides us with a framework to deliver a comprehensive set of sovereignty solutions across these countries and data center regions where we operate. So the customer expectations are clear. They want their data to be protected. They want their services to stay resilient, and they want the technology to contribute towards long-term competitiveness. In April, Brad Smith, our president, announced the digital commitments to boost Europe's competitiveness while keeping the data and operations close to home and subject to European laws and regulations. The 5 digital commitments are: we will help build a broad AI and cloud ecosystem across Europe. We will uphold Europe's digital resilience even when there is a geopolitical volatility. We will continue to protect the privacy of European data. We will always help protect and defend Europe's cybersecurity. We will help strengthen Europe's economic competitiveness, including for open source. This is Satya Nadella announcing the Microsoft Sovereign Cloud in June, so 2 months later, where he talks about the 3 pillars for sovereignty: the sovereign public cloud, private cloud, and partner clouds. So we do believe, so let's talk a little bit on each one, or mention the top pillars. We do believe that the majority of our customers will be satisfied with our public cloud and private cloud offerings. For public cloud, data stays in Europe under European law, operations and access controlled by European personnel, AI model choice and AI processing that stays in Europe. For private cloud, continuous operations across hybrid or disconnected environments, integrated cloud and productivity with Microsoft 365 Local, AI capabilities and advanced GPU support with Azure Local. Again, we do expect the majority of our customers will have their customer needs covered between the public cloud and potentially the sovereign private cloud. We did deliver the national partner cloud for specific requirements, access in-country expertise and nationally owned organizations. Germany, the Delos was designed to meet the BSI cloud requirements. In France, 𝗬𝗲 was designed to meet SecNum cloud requirements. So as part of our continuous innovations approach at Frankfurt, a couple of weeks ago, yet one more announcement, we recently announced significant expansion to our sovereign cloud capabilities, and this will continue evolving. For the sovereign public cloud, this includes sovereign landing zone, end-to-end AI data processing in Europe as part of the European Union data boundary. This is the one I mentioned earlier. This is an expansion to cover AI. and Microsoft 365 Copilot expansion, offering in-country processing for Copilot interactions in 15 countries. The sovereign private cloud, we announced support for hundreds of servers like the NVIDIA RTX 6000 Blackwell server GPUs, support for thousands of AI models, and we announced the general availability of Microsoft 365 Local. For National Partner Cloud, SAP will deploy its RISE with SAP solution on Azure for sovereign clouds, 𝗬𝗲 and 𝗬𝗲 for secure, compliant operations to modernize critical workloads. We also deepened access to in-country expertise through the digital sovereignty specialization part of the Microsoft AI Cloud Partner Program. This is all part of our commitment to deliver trusted, sovereign cloud solution and build on what's next. This is the slide I was really eager to talk to, which is the customer values we try to deliver. We have a full spectrum of values that we try to have all of our customer needs covered. Regulatory requirements. Customers can have confidence that data and operations meet local and national compliance standards. Sovereign AI data processing. Customers can harness the power of AI while maintaining control over data, infrastructure, and model governance. No cloud operator access. That means customers retain authority, their data and workloads stay protected with safeguards against unauthorized access, even from Microsoft. Data residency guarantees that information stays within the defined geographic locations, meeting local laws and privacy expectations. Finally, business continuity. Mission-critical operations can continue securely even in the event of natural or geopolitical disasters. So now that we talked about digital sovereignty, let's dig deeper into the sovereign public cloud, which was the first pillar from what you saw in the Satya announcement. So digital sovereignty can mean different things to different people, but at its core, digital sovereignty is about giving the ability for individuals and organizations to securely and independently work in the digital economy with their own controls. These controls can differ by market, industry, and customer. To participate in the digital economy, you need to stay connected. You need to work with international organizations, international customers, and international providers. We break up digital sovereignty into two different types of controls: operational and data. So let's talk about the operational controls. These are three key functionalities we're offering with operational controls. Advanced data residency, which we announced recently, is a crucial feature for organizations that require strict controls over their data's geographic location. By leveraging ADR, businesses can accelerate compliance with local regulations while utilizing full suite of Microsoft 365 services. There is a link where you can see the full list of countries where that's available, but such countries are Australia, Brazil, Canada, Chile, Germany, Italy, New Zealand, Taiwan, even the UK. Data Guardian is a new workflow we're introducing where in the rare case that a Microsoft engineer, a directly responsible individual, needs to access resources in Europe, they will be routed from their secure device, there's access controls already applied, to a VM that resides in Europe. That will be escorted or monitored by an EU domiciled individual to watch over these operations and interrupt them if they see something that is not to their compliance. That whole flow will be logged in a tamper-evident log that we can make accessible to the customer on demand in the regulated environment management in a dashboard. So the goal really of this work is to provide more transparency for our customers, for our operations, and that's why it's an operational control. Data controls. We offer customers controls to protect their data using their own key. So we have a lot of our storage providers such as Cosmos DB, SQL, they store customer data. And we have our own platform encryptions to make sure that the data stays protected. But with these controls, we offer you the ability to store, to encrypt your data using your own key that you store with Azure Key Vault Premium or managed HSM. With the sovereign cloud, we're taking this a bit further by providing external key management. So you can bring your own third-party provider and store that key material in it. So now you have your own key and your own key provider for storage. Sovereign landing zone, which we will talk about in a second, it's a refresh for that service to make sure that you can configure your environment with more sovereignty controls and policies. Customer lockbox is one of the first features we worked on as actually was a request from our financial services. Financial institutions and banks wanted to make sure that they're in control of the data access that happens by Microsoft personnel. Again, in the rare case that it happens, they can opt in to say, I want to give access, make that access proceed, or they can actually block it. That will continue with our sovereignty offerings. Last but not least, Azure Confidential Compute. I think there are a lot of talks about Azure Confidential Compute, and Mark Krasinovich spoke about it yesterday. Besides data at rest and data in transit, we want to make sure that the data in processing also is encrypted. So I'm just going to do a double click a little bit on the sovereign landing zone scenario. This is a variant of Azure Landing Zone, and it accelerates enforcing for level 1, 2, and 3 controls. So if you remember in the previous slide that for data controls, we talked about data at rest and data in processing. These level controls, level 1 is about data residency, level 2 is about data in transit and data at rest, and acceleration 3 is about data in use. So we give you policies, or we make these policy configuration easier so you can audit, enforce, or deny. So this is a slide to kind of take an example of like a useful use case for sovereignty. Imagine you're a healthcare organization and you need to handle PII data. Again, as a health care provider, you probably have also sensitive image data and clinical applications. So you have regulatory compliance needs that you need to meet, like HIPAA and GDPR. You have data residency and sovereignty needs, and then you want to make sure that your operational controls stay consistent across the regions, and you want to control how your data is accessed, processed, and logged. Using SLZ, you can configure the policies, and you don't have to start from scratch. Like even if you had ALZ configured before, you can use the accelerator to make sure that you adapt it to sovereign policies. You can configure that all of your storage nodes have to bring your own key encryption. You can say that all of the sensitive AI models have to be processed using Azure Confidential Compute. You can say that anybody, like any workload that connects to my services, can't have TLS 1.2 or lower. And then you want your key vaults to stay in the sovereign regions. You can also configure that the data residency stays within a certain boundary, like the EUDB, and replication stays within boundaries, so you're not replicating between Europe and South America, for example. This will help prevent accidental and authorized data transferred outside of the healthcare permitted regions, and you can enforce healthcare grade governance requirements using SLZ. So through this example, I wanted to show you how you can meet your regulatory compliance using the sovereign public cloud. I hope that this gave you, this presentation so far has given you a good view of what we're delivering in sovereign public cloud. And now over to Harald to speak to Azure Private. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right. You guys can hear me? Perfect. So, our sovereign private cloud story. Let's get into it. So, while we were innovating and investing a lot in our public sovereign cloud story, there's a myriad of different requirements that we keep hearing from customers that we would love to go to public cloud. The public cloud is where we really want to be, but we have all of these reasons for staying on premises. There's a lot of different rationale for certain workloads and certain requirements to keep different things on premises. customers still want to be able to have a modern way to look at their digital estate, innovate, build applications, deploy, and really think about their full end-to-end ecosystem, whether it is a workload running in public cloud or in their on-premises data center. We keep hearing they want this continuum from public to edge to on-premises to really meet customers with that experience. They don't want to have different tools for different capabilities. They want to have a consistent experience on all of these. They also want to have an integrated cloud and productivity suite. So if you're building on a SaaS solution, you're having one interface. They want to have the same way to think about deploying and managing and using those workloads, even on premises, in these more regulated scenarios. And then lastly, we're hearing customers really, really wanting to use AI workloads in these trickier cases for regulated environments. They want to leverage the same innovations and the same capabilities we are doing in public cloud. So this is really what we're hearing for customers that we're trying to help in this private sovereign cloud journey. But most importantly here, it's all about consistency. So consistency from public cloud to private cloud and the other way around as well. Really starting to think about how that looked like. Now, I mentioned there's a myriad of different reasons. So if we start with the compliance and the, I'd say, compliance reasons that we keep hearing, customers would love to modernize, but they cannot. So we've interviewed about 1,000 plus IT technical decision makers, and why can't you move to public cloud? So about 70% of all of these decision makers say they need to stay on premises because there are compliance barriers and regulatory barriers that says they cannot move to public cloud. So we tried to bucketize these to see where's the major pain points, what kind of regulations, what kind of blockages do you have? So the first one is really privacy regulations. Customers requiring to have certain compliance for where the data is stored, who's processing the data, what kind of applications are accessing that data, all kinds of reasons around privacy itself. And as Ella mentioned in her starting point, there's hundreds and hundreds of new compliance and rules and regulations coming every week. So with those in mind, there are workloads that will need to stay within your own operational premises to really meet some of these corner cases, as we would like to call them. Now, the second most important thing we're hearing is customers requiring to stay completely offline. So they need to keep their data and their systems offline. They also need to have that operational autonomy when they are operating here with no internet connectivity. The third pillar is jurisdictional control. So with all these regulations coming in, all these new laws that are being built, there's a lot of different jurisdiction controls they need to adhere to and to report to, which leads into the last pillar, which is really all about audit. So if you're having your data center and you have some audit requirements, you might be required to have a full audit and a ledger provided by a third party or some other partners to actually show what's going on, who did the change. If you're coming from an ITSM perspective, you might be familiar with this process that you need to map into. So these are some of the main reasons we're hearing from customers for why they need to stay on-prem for a subset of their capabilities and workloads. Not the majority, but it's a subset. So our approach is we want customers to go to public cloud first, look at the public sovereign cloud, sovereign controls, and then really start to think about, can I use the private sovereign cloud for these other edge cases? So if we start to think about all of these buckets of challenges, the compliance is one aspect, and then we have technical challenges. So I mentioned data privacy. So data privacy, what we're hearing from customers, can be bucketized in different things. Maybe you're operating in secret environments, top secret environments. Sure, you can do a lot of things in public sovereign cloud with the data encryption and bring your own key and those bits. But some needs to stay within your operational premises. So some of the data requirements here for more strict requirements is what we're hearing from customers. Second is the geopolitical factors. They would love to use public cloud, but they're worried about supply chain. They're worried about different geopolitical factors that might affect them. So bringing things down into their own data centers allows them to have control over these things themselves. And then with all of the AI innovations, you probably heard or went to a few sessions already at Ignite, everyone talks about AI. They want to be able to leverage those things, but also manage the risk around AI itself on premises. Because the whole AI picture changes the way you'd have to think about security, compliance, privacy. All of these things can all relate to AI. And then workflow fragmentation. If you're coming from a data center, maybe you have hundreds and thousands of different workloads running today. Maybe some are running on this system, others on that system or that platform. They are very fragmented out there. That provides a big challenge for a lot of companies. They want to streamline how they deal with those workloads, how they deploy, how they manage, how to think about that full, as a platform that enables that digitalization. And the last bucket that we really group things into is that on-prem operational complexity. So if you're dealing with a lot of different providers, you have different tools, you have different APIs, you have a lot of different things to deal with, a lot of different, let's say, management tools that you need to adhere to. And these are all of the challenges we keep hearing from these customers. So with our private sovereign cloud, this is really what we're trying to simplify and enable customers to use in this space. So our private sovereign cloud, or sovereign private cloud, depending on the order you do it, is all backed by Azure Local. So Azure Local is our fundamental, let's say, technology that enables our sovereign private cloud. So what innovation pillars are we building around? So starting first, it's all about cloud innovation with local control. This means you have a cloud control plane, but your infrastructure runs on premises. You have a consistent way of managing and deploying and operating your local infrastructure from a consistent cloud control plane. So this is all enabled by a technology called Azure Arc, but Azure Local makes this continuum available to run on premises within your own operational control. And here we're doing a lot of innovations. We're bringing down new capabilities, and I'll go into some of the recent announcements we did as well in bringing cloud-like capabilities down through that operational control and continuous innovation down onto on-premises. Second pillar is really bringing down familiar workloads and familiar productivity suites. So the first in this, I'd say, chunk of innovation is bringing down M365 Local that you'll hear more about, and you might have heard about it already. This is one of those familiar tools, familiar products. We want to run it, we want to operate it on that infrastructure and that continuous way of thinking about operations. So you can expect some innovations happening in these ones. The third pillar is really about scale points and flexible scale. So we've heard from customers, I want to run a smaller device. I have a workload that needs a very small, I'd say, footprint. Or I have a massive workload that needs a massive footprint. Maybe I have SAN storage out there that requires external storage. We heard customers asking for all of these things. So now with our Azure Local and our private sovereign cloud, we are simplifying how we're thinking about these things in a continuum of scale points. And this is just the starting point. We are also now enabling disconnected operations for Azure Local to meet with that 40% pillar that I mentioned, customers that really needs to operate fully disconnected. With the disconnected operations, we are actually bringing down cloud controls and that control plane to operate within customers on premises. And over time, we're bringing in additional capabilities as well, and you'll hear more about that in a later session. So the fifth pillar is really security. So with Azure Local, we are providing a hardened security platform by default, so you no longer have to do the guesswork out of how do I configure this in the best secure fashion. We're also enabling certain capabilities of confidential compute and confidential VMs and trusted launch as part of this, I'd say, innovated pillar. So under the security part, there's a lot of innovations happening in public cloud, and we want to enable that in the local cloud as well. And then lastly, it's all about AI. So how can we bring down AI capabilities into the customer's data centers, enable them to run AI workloads, bring their own workloads, do their own LLMs and AI training models and so forth. So these are all the pillars that we are doing innovation around. So what have we done lately? Can't just have all the talk and without doing anything. So just to give you some ideas of the recent announcements that we've been doing lately. Starting with that whole pillar of security that I mentioned, we heard from customers, we love the story, but the network complexity is too complex. We needed to open a whole bunch of firewall endpoints. That was too complex. So we took the feedback, we heard you. So now we've released Arc Gateway in GA that really simplifies that outbound connectivity in terms of firewall and hardens the security posture from your network point of view. Meaning you can deploy Azure Local with Arc Gateway and have a reduced attack surface and have that flexibility from a continuous innovation. Secondly, we have GA'd the Azure Migrate story. And this really gives you a seamlessly migrate from VMware to Azure Local in an agent-led fashion. So if you're looking at modernizing, moving away workloads from a platform to the other, this really helps you with that journey. So you can do assessments of it, you can do the migration itself, and you can get full reports on if it's possible or not, or if you should be refactoring workloads or not. We also announced the local identity without Active Directory. So Azure Local has traditionally been require Active Directory as part of the deployment. So now with the AD-less, as we call it, you can deploy Azure Local without having an Active Directory on premises. So this uses Azure Key Vault to keep the secrets and the, I'd say, things secure. And that allows you to not domain join those Azure Local nodes as part of that deployment flow. So really simplifying how you can do that as a local cluster that sits in your data center without all of these prerequisites. We also announced the network security groups. So this is just to show you how we're thinking about the whole simplicity of setting up and architecting workloads. Network security group is one of those new innovations we're doing with Arc-enabled SDN, so software-defined networking. So if you're coming from Azure, you are used to NSGs as a network security group concept. What we're doing now is bringing down that concept to run on Azure Local. So the way you think about network security rules, it's the same concept. You have it running in public cloud. Here's a set of inbound and outbound rules. You have the same concept running on Azure Local to define your network posture. So this is just one of the recent let's say, announcements that you can expect to evolve over time. We also have in the security pillar trusted launch VMs with guest attestation. So we have an attestation service that you can leverage with this trusted launch to make sure the VMs haven't been tampered with. For some customers, this is essential. You can have a VM running on Azure Local, but you want to make sure that that VM hasn't been tampered with in any way. So you go out to that attestation service. And lastly, we also announced the rack-aware clustering. Rack-aware cluster is now in preview. And this is the second portion of this innovation where we're taking similar concepts from Azure, bringing them down on premises. So with rack-aware clustering, you can start to think about similar concept as zones in public Azure, but just sitting locally. So with rack-aware cluster, we're enabling 2 different zones in your data center. So you can architect workloads to be in one zone or the other, or grouped together in one zone. So really enabling and helping customers to stay resilient in terms of data center failures and so forth. So that was what we've been announcing lately. A lot of stuff, and we're not stopping. We've been announcing a lot of news. This was just a tiny bit of it. We do have a lot of upcoming product launches. So I mentioned that flexibility in terms of scale points. We do have now an upcoming product launch to support what we call multi-rack. This is basically supporting, I think, up to 128 nodes across racks, aka that's the multi-rack, to really address customers requiring higher footprints in their data center. So this is one of our upcoming product announcements. So if you are interested in this one, I'll give you a session later on today. They will cover different bits and pieces of the upcoming product launches a little bit more in detail. We are also going to launch the disconnected operations in GA early next year. So expect that product launch to come early next year, where customers can now start leveraging the disconnected operations to meet that 40% need for customers requiring to operate fully air-gapped or disconnected or offline from the internet. We are also adding support for different new GPUs. We have a pretty long list of GPUs. The recent announcement we had was with the NVIDIA show. So now we are actually supporting the latest NVIDIA RTX 6000 Blackwell GPU. So customers that are looking at the latest and greatest GPU to run their AI workloads or their heavy graphic intensive workloads can now leverage this on top of Azure Local to create VMs or container-based applications. We also launched GA for M365 Local. So this is now in a GA state. And you can expect M365 Local disconnected to come around the launch of disconnected operations or shortly after the launch of disconnected operations as well. So there's a dependency there between those capabilities. We announced SAN support. So now we are supporting SAN from 6 different providers officially. So you can connect it to like your common SAN providers, whether it's NetApp, whether it's Dell. Pick your SAN provider. That's now supported over fiber channel. iSCSI is on the roadmap to be implemented, but this is really to help customers that have existing investments or offsetting that storage requirements for their data centers. So that's some of the upcoming product launches. If you take a look at some of the new roadmap scenarios that was announced now at Frankfurt, I believe, we are investing in these enhanced change controls. So what that means is we want customers to leverage Azure, public Azure. We want them to leverage the control plane in Azure if they can, but give them control of the change that happens. So with enhanced change controls, this is one of those elements where you can do the operation in the public control plane, but you can sit on premises and approve that operation to happen. That gives you more operational control of these things. So always thinking public cloud first, even if it is Azure Local connected. I mentioned disconnected, that's one of the roadmaps, but this is really for the connected scenario and connected flow. We're also now looking into how can we help customers move from a hybrid cloud or a hybrid motion with Azure Local connected or any other workload into the disconnected space. So this is some of the things we're hearing from customers is really, I have this workload, I would love to run it connected, but I need a resiliency policy to move it into a disconnected space in terms of disasters. So we're doing work here to really help customers along that journey as well. And the last one is really site-to-site recovery. So if I have an Azure Local cluster sitting in my data center, I might want to have it replicated to a different data center in terms of having full resiliency for different kind of failure points. So we're doing site-to-site recovery to help customers with these, these different challenges. We are building out these capabilities right now, so you can expect these to be coming in a few months or more. So if we take a look at, okay, this is all great. These are all product features. Sorry. How does this look like in a real world example, in a real world customer scenario? So here is a healthcare example. You could technically replace this with most other industries and just change these pillars, and you can start to think about how this would relate to you and yourself. But from a healthcare perspective, this is taken from an existing customer, and we've added a couple of the new capabilities on this one. They're looking at patient care. So how can they optimize their hospital situation where they have a whole bunch of doctors and medical personnel and nurses that needs to have applications available anywhere, need to be able to log in, run their patient diagnostics, and they need that flexibility. They also need to have local data stored due to compliance. So they can't rely on an internet connection for a variety of reasons. Sure, they can operate it with an internet-based connection, but the data needs to stay on premises. They also want to optimize logistics. So really simplify that workflow for anyone in that hospital, whether it is doctors and nurses and whatnot of personnel, or the IT operations that are actually backing that full support scenario for those hospitals. And of course, scheduling is important from anyone that is in this business, making sure you have efficient scheduling of different resources. They want to have centralized management, because this is a healthcare provider that manages multiple hospitals across locations. They don't want to have single silos out there. They want to centralize that management, but keep that data local. So really enabling these scenarios. And then with the last pillar, what happens in case of a disaster? How can we still operate and run this hospital in case of a disaster scenario? And that's where disconnected operations comes in mind. Are we able to still operate our hospital, even if it is with a subset of capabilities, in a disaster scenario? So these are the concerns and these are the things this customer is thinking of. So how would this look like from an architectural perspective? So starting in Azure with public cloud, we have a few different services. So here you see Microsoft Azure with policy, which is an essential component to our whole public sovereign cloud story, and also our private sovereign cloud story. There's Azure Monitor, there's Defender for Cloud, but we also have Azure Virtual Desktop running in public cloud. Now, through Azure Arc, the customer will be deploying Azure Local on different sites. They will manage them centrally. So imagine you have location 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, number of hospitals or number of sites. They can define a policy. They can monitor and operate all of these sites in a very coherent way. They can deploy Azure Virtual Desktop running on these host pools that actually runs locally. That means a hospital worker can bring up their iPad or bring up whatever device they have and use Azure Virtual Desktop. As long as there's a simple internet connectivity, they will have a local brokered connection afterwards. That means low latency. All of the backend applications can be running on Azure Local, sitting in that hospital, can be deployed and managed centrally, but that sits locally. And this is important from that compliance and regulatory compliance perspective. Now, you can imagine they could have different backend services here. They could have SQL Server running there. That could be a myriad of different services and capabilities. So I mentioned these kind of different devices they would have there. That could be everything from a clinical device to workstations, admin PCs. It could be anything within your hospital estate or whatever industry you guys are in. Now for the last pillar, I mentioned disconnected operations. And this is really where that disaster recovery comes in for this kind of thinking, is what happens if I'm operating 90 days, 3 months, or 6 months, or 12 months without any internet connectivity? Maybe there's a geopolitical reason going on. Maybe there's a disaster, an earthquake, or different things could happen. So for these customers, it's important to have that resiliency story and that backup policy for, okay, if this happened, what is my story looking like? So here you see disconnected operations. In this example, would be running locally on every hospital. You would have a subset of Azure available with Azure Policy and Key Vault and these things in the portal. The workloads, some of them could be moved to Azure Local, and you could have that backup restore capability that I mentioned that we're looking at bringing on board to really help with that scenario. So you would take the Azure Local connected mode, have those workloads replicated or backed up, and just restore them on that disconnected operations platform in case of a disaster. Now, they wouldn't necessarily need to be deployed in single silos like here. If there was a centralized IT, they could, of course, have a network mesh and so on. But this is just to give you that idea of how to think around the whole scenario, end to end. So with the Microsoft Sovereign Cloud, we're really looking at bringing flexibility, adaptability for any customer, no matter where you are. If you can use public cloud, if you can migrate and modernize, start leveraging all of the public sovereign cloud controls that Ella spoke about, all of the innovations we're doing there, it's a good fit. If you have certain regulatory workloads that needs to stay on premises, we have a solution for that as well. So we want to enable that trusted cloud to really meet you wherever you are with a consistent way of deploying and managing these workloads, no matter where. If you are interested in learning more, there is a blog post on aka.ms/sovereign cloud blog. You can take a snapshot of it. We do have some upcoming sessions that you can go to. I highly encourage you to go to those sessions. We have the Unlock the Power of Azure Local coming up later today. We have the What's New in Azure Local. They will cover a little bit more in depth some of those components that I mentioned today. So highly recommend you guys are going to those sessions. This is just to give you an aggregate of those. We also have a new improved Azure Accelerate program. So this is really our next step where we have taken the cloud and modernized, the migrate and modernize program, streamlined it, where you can get access to experts, training material, all incentive programs, and all of these things are now put under the Azure Accelerate program. So if you are looking at migrating or modernizing, even if it is a sovereign discussion, go to this program and learn more for resources that we have in Microsoft. And then lastly, if you are interested in skilling programs, learning more, skilling up your people in your company, you can scan this tag. There is a learning path for the migrate and modernize, where you can get specialized learning, and you can pick the Microsoft Learn different modules for how you want to skill up on these topics. So by that, I'd encourage everyone to scan this, give us feedback, and by that, I'm saying thank you.